Welcome to Purr Wag Adopt, Berkshire Humane Society's award-winning television show. My name is John Perreault. I am your host today, and I'm also the executive director. And normally I always tell you the most important guest always shows up at the end of the show, and that's normally our dog or cat who happens to be highlighted and visiting us that day. But today I think our most important guest is coming first, and that is our local attorney, Robert M. Fuster, who just happens to be the founder of the Berkshire Humane Society, which is celebrating its 20 years. So welcome, Robert.
Thank you, thank you.
20 years, it's been a long, long time. It's gone by quick.
It's gone by very, very quick.
Yeah, and we're just talking off the air quickly about how our new shelter that we built is already 9 years old. Like, how did 9 years already go by? Just want to set the stage for what we're going to talk about today, Robert. Back in 1992, actually 1991, October 91, I found out that the shelter I was managing, the MSPCA shelter in Pittsfield, was the MSPCA decided no longer to fund that shelter, and that, but instead of just closing the doors, they thought they'd hold some community meetings, and the goal was to try and get some people in the community to form an organization and take over the operations of what the MSPCA were doing and had been doing for over 60 years in that community. And the first meeting, we'll set the stage, Robert. The first meeting we held at the Lenox Community Center. You were not present, and Carter Luke from the MSPCA was talking about how, you know, we needed a leader, we needed someone to step to the plate to take on this big task of forming this organization. And your wife Irene stood up and basically said, she was sort of irritated, like, what are you guys doing? I'm giving, you know, my husband Robert Fuster, call him in the morning, he'll do this, no problem, let's get this up and going and get this going. And from there, I know Carter Luke had called you. And can you tell us about those first initial phone conversations?
Oh, certainly. Frankly, my wife Irene volunteered me to Carter Luke. And she told me about it. It's sort of in an offhand way. And frankly, I didn't know anything was going to come of it. This isn't something I was
seeking out.
Yeah, and I wasn't very enthusiastic about it to begin with. And then Carter Luke called me, and basically the conversation went something like this: we're trying to encourage the people in the community to put together an entity to run the shelter, which they meaning the MSPCA, was going to close December 31st of 1992. And he said, well, your wife volunteered you, and what do you think, and do you have an interest in doing this? And I told him, frankly, I'd never been to the shelter. I had no experience in forming a shelter entity, but I would consider doing it. And they had another meeting that was scheduled. I think it was scheduled for the Jewish Community Center.
Yep, that was one of four. Yep.
Yeah, and that was the only meeting that I attended. And I think that was the last meeting.
That was the very last meeting.
That was the last meeting. And I met with Carter Luke and a fellow named Joe Silva. That day, we had lunch together. We had met earlier in my office. And so I sort of went over the parameters of what I would want the MSPCA to do if I was actually going to form an entity. And do you want me to go into what I asked them to do? Yeah, I told them that if we formed an entity and we were successful in the operation of the shelter, that I wanted to own the building, and I didn't want to pay for the building. I told them that I wanted them to lay in at least a year's supply of food for the animals, of course. I told them, and this to me was the most important thing, that they not hire away any of the staff, and that included you, John.
Yep. Lisa and myself, there were two of us.
That's right, you and Lisa, who are still with the shelter, thank God. And that was, I was very, very firm about that. And it's sort of unfair to you because I didn't really know you at the time, but I didn't want you to leave the shelter because at that point, I knew, based on inquiries, how important you were going to be to the continued operation of that shelter. And I told them I wanted them to bring the shelter up to code, that is the building code. I told them that I wanted them to stop soliciting for contributions in Berkshire County while I was forming this organization. I also told them that I wanted them to make available to us professionals, that is people who are professional in the humane organization community and in the formation of this kind of a nonprofit to provide education for us as frequently as we wished. And they agreed to do all of those things.
Yeah.
And they did, and they were true to their word. They were very helpful in that regard.
Yeah. I think one of the key things you said was that the help. We got to go to seminars, and we had a board. We had a great initial board, but they were a bunch of workers. No one, other than maybe yourself, knew what it was like to be in a board. And so we got some training. We brought in a gentleman known worldwide in the animal field, Dennon Riley, to provide some training to the board. And I think that was a very crucial and key move because I think it allowed us to move forward. Everybody knew what their job was or what their job was supposed to be. And I know that you always gave everybody a chance to have their voice heard, but when you have animals and you have people with passion, sometimes it's very difficult to get everybody going in the right direction, and that's something you were capable of doing as well. The first year, so we started these meetings, we formed in March 19th or March 9th of 1992, and we had all the way to January 1st to raise a year's worth of operating money. And by September that year, we had about $150,000 we raised, roughly, give or take a few dollars, for 1993's operating budget. And I think that's when you went back to the MSPCA and got them to sign over the building, I believe.
Well, that's when I told them that I wanted them to do that. They didn't do it formally until January 1st of 1993. But it was in September, and I said, look, we're a go. We're financially secured, at least for the next year. It was very important for me to know that we had, for example, your salary in place and Lisa's salary, and we could take care of our overhead. And once that was secured, and it took us 5 months to do it, something like that.
And we did a lot of different events. Wow.
We did a lot of events, and I did a lot of handshaking.
Yep.
And I called in a lot of favors, and I spoke to a lot of friends. And we had the money in place by September.
September that year.
Yep, and the rest is history. Here we are, 20 years later.
What were some of the initial biggest decisions as the board started meeting? And I think it's amazing. I think we met one meeting. You told everybody by the next meeting you wanted to have our organization name and logo. And before we left the meeting that night, we had the name down.
That's right.
We came back for the next meeting 2 weeks later. We had chosen our logo, which you see here on our screen. And then within 2 weeks, and 2 weeks after, I think you had us incorporated at that point as well.
Yeah, and our nonprofit status, which was very, very important. But the big decisions that we made in the very, very beginning, I think one of the big decisions was to spay and neuter every animal before they left the facility.
Yep.
I think that was a major decision.
Yep.
Second major decision was that we were going to be an open admission shelter. I don't know if the folks know what that means, but we don't turn away any animal for any reason. And I think, and you'll correct me, John, but I think we're the only open admission shelter in the Northeast, unless I'm mistaken about that.
You know what? We're one of the few left in New England, that's for sure.
Okay.
Columbia, Mohawk Hudson over in Menands is an open admission shelter. And then the MSPCA still remain open admission shelters. But our friends over in the north and up in Vermont and to the south in Connecticut, the closer shelters are limited access. And I think that was probably the most important decision, again, because it allowed us to keep our doors open for every animal that came in and needed our attention.
That was a major decision, no question about it.
Especially at that point, we were the only place in town, really. We had to either go to Springfield or Albany, really. And maybe Hudson, New York would be the next closest.
You know, I'll tell you something else that was very important, and I'm going to, this is like a shout out to the veterinary community.
That was my next question, so go ahead.
Of Berkshire County. We were concerned about having to pay for medical bills, especially since we were going to spay and neuter every animal that came in. And being an open admission shelter, we would take in animals that were sick or injured, and we would take care of them. And we had to make sure that we were able to pay the medical bills. I brought in all of the veterinarians in this community. We met at the shelter and told them that we were going to take over the shelter operation from the MSPCA, but that we could only afford a certain amount of money per particular procedure. And I think you and I sat down,
Yep.
John, and figured out how much we could pay per procedure. And I told them that's what we want to do. And every single veterinarian in Berkshire County
Very supportive.
bought into that system. And that first price list lasted for about 10 years, I think.
Or more.
Or more.
Yep.
Until they came to us and said, look, we're beginning to lose money.
Yep.
And so we raised it a little bit, but they were very supportive. And you heard the name Denon Riley before. Denon told us that based on his experience, we were the only shelter whose entire veterinary community cooperated in that regard.
I think today you could probably still state that very few shelters have a relationship with their veterinary community as Berkshire Humane Society does. And I think there's 26 veterinarians and 11 practices, I think, or maybe now there's 10 practices. And that was crucial, because I know the board came to me and said, John, if I was to grant you one wish, what would that wish be? And my wish was to make sure every animal was spayed and neutered first, because all my years prior to that, we were adopting out animals and seeing litters of puppies and kittens coming in from the animals we were adopting out. And I think we had a 60% compliance rate, because back then we did contracts. And not everybody honored their contract. We couldn't find them. There was only a few employees, hard to follow up. And so to this day, we still have 100% compliance on every animal that's left our building, goes spayed, neutered first, unless it's a medical reason and we have to wait. There's been very few of those, but even those now are 100%. So I think that would, to me, that was one of our key decisions. And I go back to the veterinarians, and not only were they supportive through our spays and neuters and other types of surgeries, but they were supporting people and telling people to come, you're in need of an animal, go to Berkshire Humane Society, do a great job. You get a good education, and they'll send you back to us. They all offer free health exams to this day. Something you started 20 years ago is still happening today.
That's right.
And those fees really haven't gone up that much.
No,
we're
no,
talking
they-
$5 or $10 per surgery for 20 years.
They've been
and,
very generous with us. There's no question about it.
And what that has allowed us to do, Robert, too, is it keeps our adoption fees is fairly affordable, because as they go up, our adoption fees would go up, and so they've played a major part. Other key successes. Why do you think we've been so successful?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think that we've been successful, or as successful, because we are community friendly. We've brought in the Berkshire County and surrounding communities. We have, as you, I don't have to tell you, we have members from Connecticut and Vermont and New York. I think we're successful because we reach out to people and we help people, and it's a genuinely comfortable place to be. And we have a staff, a paid staff, that I'm sure there's no shelter around that compares to the quality and compassion and passion of our staff. And I think the staff has a lot to do with our success. And our volunteers. Mm-hmm. We've had thousands of volunteers over the years, without whom we could never run the shelter. So I think it's our outreach, and all of our outreach programs are educational programs. We visited, since we've been in operation, thousands and thousands of children in schools, and we've had, I don't know how many birthday parties for kids at the shelter. And the important thing is that their parents come with them, and the parents get to see the shelter and learn who we are. And we have a summer camp that is second to none.
It fills up every year.
Yeah, I think
5, 6 weeks, whatever we decide to run, fills up very, very quickly. Karen does a great job with camp and the birthday parties as well. And I know we were talking about the volunteers, and I think I said this at our anniversary party too, is that I knew we had between 180 and 200 volunteers that are with us every single month, doing something, maybe working in the kennel, working in the feline area, maybe doing mailings, it may be baking for an event that we're having, could be working on events, front desk, whatever it may be, the board of directors. And I think a lot of people forget that our board of directors are all volunteers. And so I bring that up. But one day I want to have a meeting, not that long ago, a month or so ago, with our kennel volunteers. And I asked Terry, the volunteer coordinator, just I want you to set me up with a date and time, and I want to meet with the kennel volunteer. She said, which room you want to use, John? I said, doesn't matter to me. We can meet anywhere. She said, oh, it does matter because there's over 40 people that walk dogs on a weekly basis. And even though I'm there and I see it every day, I didn't realize that not only the staff, there's over 40 people every single week that are working in our kennel areas walking dogs. And that, to me, that just, sometimes the little numbers can jump out at you, and that was a
well.
number that
How
jumped out
about
at
this
me.
little number in terms of walking the dogs? And what most people don't know, I'm sure, is that our dogs are walked at least 5 times a day.
Minimal.
Minimal, 5 times a day. That's major. And another thing that I think has made us successful, especially in the new building, is it's such a people-friendly building, an animal-friendly building,
Yep.
and I know a lot of people are afraid or reluctant to go into any shelter because they think, first of all, it may smell, it may be too loud, it may be boisterous, it may be an uncomfortable place to be. But our shelter, the new shelter, is just the opposite. It's a people-friendly and an animal-friendly place. It looks good, it smells good, it's a delightful, delightful place to be, and it's clean as a whistle.
Yeah, that's
Clean as it's a beautiful place.
When I was getting ready to talk about, what made Berkshire Humane Society successful over 20 years, I talk about what you were talking about earlier, the staff, the volunteers, the program, the community, which includes our veterinarians. And before I was done thinking about it, I had to include the building. And historically, my thought is, a humane society is only as good as the people that are in it, the people that are serving the animals, and whether it be a staff or a volunteer member of the community. But our building has made a major impact on the quality of life, not just in the care in the building, but outside the building as well. Robert, what we came into work, we had 8 dog kennels and about a dozen cat cages. They were in the same room when we first started in '93, and we raised about 40,000. We were able to separate the dogs from the cats. Then we had that big flood. We accomplished so much in that other building, but still, when you're looking at, instead of holding 15 or 20 animals to holding 90, 100, 110 cats and about 25 dogs, and you're thinking over the last 9 years we've had that capability, the number of lives that building has saved is just enormous.
Well, I was trying to figure out how many lives we've saved. We've handled 40-something thousand animals at least.
Those are the numbers that came into the building, not the ones we've helped, but the number that have come
those
in.
are the number of animals that have come into our facilities, both of them. But when you consider the fact that every animal is spayed and neutered, and when you consider our educational programs and that we've helped non-shelter animals be spayed or neutered, various certificates and things like that, we have probably saved the lives of 1 million animals. Who knows how many? It's
when you look at the spaying and neutering, obviously 1 million may even be a low number, but
that may be a low number.
Yeah, but the actual animals that we touch, I would guess is well over 60, probably between 60 and 80,000. Over 700 families a year use our food bank. Those are animals not entering the building because our program is keeping them in a good home. We supply them with some food, keep them out of our building. Family Dog School is another program that helps. Karen going into the classroom, giving some humane education, the kids take home and help that animal at home. So the number of animals we touch is certainly very, 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 very large. Just got another minute or two here, Robert, before we bring on our special guest today. But is there anything else that you'd like to say to our guests out there that are listening today?
Well, I'd be remiss if I talked about the Humane Society and didn't remind people that it costs a lot of money to keep our shelter going.
Yeah.
And as generous as our community has been and is now, that generosity has to continue. Our programs are essential to the functioning of the Humane Society and the wonderful things that we do for our community. So please volunteer, please write checks. I don't want to sound crass, but that's the way it is. Please support us. We have lots of events, and It's a wonderful place to be. Come visit. I think we didn't say it, but about 20,000 people a year come to
walk through
visit
our
our
doors.
shelter, just to see it and to enjoy the sights and the sounds. Take advantage. Go in there and see what it's like. You're going to be surprised what you find.
Yeah. And you know, one of the things, going back to the building quickly too, is that you're talking about people don't come to shelters, which we've learned through the years, odor and noise and sad situations. And I don't think you find that at all at the Berkshire Humane Society, especially at 214 Barker Road, because it's certainly one special place. And to show you just how special it is, we're going to show you now some animals that are available for adoption, and we'll be right back with, hopefully Robert will stay, we'll add Diane on with our special guest, and so we'll be right back. So enjoy the animals you're going to view right now. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Purr Wag Adopt, and we have November is Adopt a Senior Pet Shelter Pet Month, and today we have a special guest. Not only is Diane visiting us, who do we have with us today, Diane?
Today we have Sullivan, who is an 8-year-old terrier mix, and if John can give him a treat so
Sullivan.
you could see him. He is a lovely boy. He came in September. His owners were moving. He is house trained, rides excellent in the car. I took him over here. Loves people. He has a high prey drive, so we would not put him in a home with cats or even little children.
I'm sorry, Sal, you ran out of treats.
But he's just a wonderful boy, a senior boy, looking for his forever home. And
He's very well mannered at the shelter as well.
Very well mannered, yeah. Housebroken, rides really well, learning to walk nice on a leash.
And I think he's pretty good around other dogs, right?
He's better with smaller dogs and large dogs.
But no cats.
No cats, absolutely no cats.
He's
Sullivan.
a beautiful animal.
He's a very, very nice
He is.
animal. Been with us since September, so we're surprised that Sully's still with us. But hopefully someone will be watching today's show and give us a call and make
that
Sully that very special adoption. And I know, Diane, you, as like myself, very soft on adopting a senior pet. I think they're the best pets in the world.
They are. They really are.
He's 8. He has many, many more years to give somebody some great companionship as well.
Yeah, he's very energetic. He's great for his age.
So there is Sullivan. Great, great dog. Well, I want to thank everybody for watching this week. And again, if you're interested in Sully or any other animal, stop by the shelter and visit us at 214 Barker Road or at 301 Stockbridge Road in Great Barrington and see the great pets that we have available for adoption. I want to thank Robert not only for coming in today, but we've said this all along as the founder. Without Robert, the Berkshire Humane Society would not be here. And if it was here, we'd probably still be down at 108 Cattle Road, barely giving making the minimums and doing as best we can. But because of you, Robert, we're able to do these great things, not only like having our television show, but also being able to find a great home for Sully here and the many other thousands of animals we found homes for the last 20 years. So thank you very much. Well, and as always, thank Diane as well for coming in with Sully, right?
My pleasure.
Sully makes it worthwhile.
He certainly does.
Oh, well worth the effort. Right, Sully?
He's very
Absolutely.
quiet.
Oh, look at him, look at him.
He's very quiet.
Good boy. Good.
He's a nice boy.
Well, thank you for watching, and hopefully you'll tune in again for Purr Wag Adopt, Berkshire Humane Society's award-winning television show. My name is John Perreault, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.